Hello and welcome to another episode of the NHL. My name is Jeremy Schooler, and we have maybe our most packed show we have had in quite some time as we come down on the final home stretch of the NHL season, as every team in the league has at most 10 games, cases more like 8 remaining, and we head into this final stretch where we're going to see a few more teams clinching division titles or playoff spots in the next few days, wrapping up some big playoff races down the stretch in all 4 divisions. 3 teams have already clinched playoff spots. The Vegas Golden Knights, the Colorado Avalanche, both fairly expected in the West, but the Minnesota Wild, after just 46 games, a team that was not predicted to even make the playoffs by most pundits, has clinched a playoff spot as they are seed in the West, 1 point behind the Colorado Avalanche, 5 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights, and 18 points ahead of the 4th place Arizona Coyotes. And now it is up to Arizona and St. Louis, and I guess probably not going to get it because they've played more games and are not as good, but Arizona and St. Louis fighting for that final playoff spot, for the right to play either Vegas or Colorado or Minnesota at this point. I mean, the Wild are absolutely on a heater. They've won 7 straight games and won in their last 10. They have just looked unstoppable. And as I said, they are only 1 point behind the Colorado Avalanche and only 5 behind Vegas. This division race is not over. I mean, the Wild or Avalanche could still win it, which would be because these 3 teams are also close together, but whoever gets the 1 seed does get to play Arizona or St. Louis, which would be huge for them, as those teams are obviously much worse than the 3 at the top of the division: Minnesota, Vegas, Colorado. And of course, in the way the season is working this year with the small series, 2 and 3 days, stuff like that that's going on, we have 4 games remaining between St. Louis and Minnesota, as well as 2 between Vegas and Minnesota. So Minnesota still playing, 2 games left. The Knights in first place in the division, 5 points ahead of them. So that will be great to see. To see Minnesota and Vegas play, as if Minnesota is able to sweep that, take 4 points from them, then they really don't have to pick up one other for the season. As for Colorado has won against St. Louis. That game will be tonight, and then at Vegas, 2 non-playoff teams: St. Louis for 4, LA for 2, which is why I think Colorado might be the favorite to win the division, because they have 6 straight games against really poor opponents, 4 straight against San Jose. I mean, they should be able to get at least 6 or 8 points in that 4-game stretch against San Jose. That's 2 at the Ball Center in Denver, and then 2 at the SAP Center in San Jose. And then they go for 2 to LA, and then 1 more to Vegas, 2 more in LA. So they only play 2 games left in the whole season against playoff team against Vegas, because as of right now, St. Louis is not in a playoff spot, although they do play St. Louis tonight. Those 2 games against Vegas for Colorado are the only playoff games they have. So my prediction to win the division would be Colorado, despite the fact that they are 4 points back. They play games in Vegas. So really, if both teams were to win out, which obviously isn't since they play each other, Colorado will actually get the division title since they do play 2 more games. So my predictions for the West Division go Colorado, Vegas, Minnesota. But I think Minnesota, I wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota climbed into the 2 spot, but my prediction is going to be Colorado, Vegas, Minnesota. And then the team getting fed to the number 1 seed, whoever it is, will be Arizona. I think Arizona outlasts St. Louis in the long run, despite the fact that Arizona has played 3 more than St. Louis and has just 1 more point. So St. Louis mathematically would be the favorite to win at this point, to win that 4th spot, but I'm still going to stick with Arizona. But those 3 teams, Vegas, Colorado, Minnesota, are the only teams that have clinched playoff spots at this point. Heading over to Central Division, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, the top 3 in that division. A very similar setup to the West Division, as you have 3 teams at the top, very close to each other in the standings, then a massive drop to that 4th spot. So in this case, it's not as the West, but Carolina at 68 points, Florida at 67 points, Tampa at 66, and then it's a 12-point drop to Nashville. Carolina, Florida, Tampa Bay, this has been a topic of discussion on the show for a couple weeks now. Who's going to finish first in that division? So back and forth. They all play each other recently quite a bit. But Carolina at 47 games, Florida at 49 games played, Tampa at 48. So my prediction is as actually going to Swiss week, and I'm going to stick with this for Tampa to win the division. I think Tampa does come back and does win the division in the Central, and that is because they played fewer games. They're 2 points back. They played one less game but more importantly, it would be, I think, especially considering the series that are often happening, would be the remaining schedule and the head-to-head. Tampa closes the year with 2 at Florida, 2 games in Sunrise. Other than that, they've got home against Dallas. 3 at home against Dallas, 1 against the Red Wings, 1 against the Blackhawks. Lightning Stars, I mean, that was a very anticipated matchup at the beginning of the year. It's the first time that the Stanley Cup champions have been in the same division. The Stanley Cup champion and the Stanley Cup runner-up have been in the same division in decades. There's not living up to expectations, going from Western Conference champions to possibly making the playoffs, but I would guess more likely out of it this year. And so Tampa Bay has 3 left against Dallas at home. They go at Chicago, then they play Dallas, at Detroit twice, at home against Dallas twice, and then the only 2 games they're playing against playoff opponents for the rest of the year will be those 2 final games of the season in Sunrise. As for the Panthers will be playing against Nashville tonight and tomorrow, on the road against Nashville tonight and tomorrow. So that'll actually be a huge matchup for them, as Nashville, especially 2 straight on the road there, the tough opponent that is a playoff team, and it's a team that's playing in the first round of the playoffs. So they've got 2 against Nashville, then they go to Chicago for 2 against Dallas, then 2 against Tampa. So the Panthers also have these 2 tricky games against the Predators, but then they're against Tampa. And those 2 final games of the year, I really think it's going to come down to that, which is one reason I love this divisional play, this divisional series play this season, as you have lots of division races, lots of playoff spots, lots of big games coming out at the end of the year as teams play each other. In the case of the Hurricanes, they'll play at Dallas for 2 tonight and tomorrow. Then they come home to face the Red Wings, Blue Jackets, Hawks for 3, and then 2 in Nashville. So the Hurricanes don't play the Predators. The Hurricanes don't play Panthers for the remainder of the season, but they do play 2 in Nashville, just as Florida does. 3 straight against Chicago. Chicago's not a bad team by any stretch. They're not out of it. They're going to be fighting for their playoff lives. And then also Dallas, and then Detroit and Columbus. So lots to come down to in this division, and I really think it's going to come down to that final series of the year, Florida and Tampa Bay. That may just be a preview of their playoff series, but still, if you can see two teams play each other twice in the final 2 days and then play a playoff series, that's basically like a 9-game playoff series, and that's awesome. So Florida, Tampa Bay, at a minimum, will probably be fighting for home ice advantage, but potentially for the division in that final 2 games of the season. Over to the Mass Mutual East division, where we have a new division leader for the in quite a while, as Washington had been on top of the division for a while with the Islanders right behind them. Before Washington was able to distance themselves from New York, for at least the Capitals and the Islanders did play 2 games this past week. Washington winning both, 1 in a shootout, 1-0, and the next one 6-3. So the Caps overtaking the Islanders by 3 points. But Pittsburgh, 8-1-1 in their last 10. The Pittsburgh Penguins, the Minnesota Wild, 8-1-1, absolutely on fire. Both of those records are the best records any team in the league has in their last 10. No one else is tied with them even. So Pittsburgh launching themselves into first place. They have played 1 more game than Washington, 1 more points ahead in points percentage. I still think Washington's going to win the division. But for the Caps, their remaining schedule is another one against the Islanders, this one at home. The Caps very impressive, winning 2 games on Long Island last week. They play the Islanders at home tomorrow. Probably the biggest matchup of the year for them will be Saturday afternoon at home against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then the Caps will go to 2 games at Madison Square Garden, 2 against the playoff list Philadelphia Flyers, to say that, but I'm fine with it. And then against the Bruins. So that game against Pittsburgh on Saturday, with about 4 or 5 games left in the season, that will be a big game for both teams, as that really could decide the division. Those 2 points swinging one way or the other will be massive. So once again, the Caps have those 2 games. That's 2 games against Pittsburgh, April 29th and then May 1st. Massive games for both of them. But first, the Caps with the Islanders tonight. If the Caps can get a third straight win against the Islanders, I really think they're going to deserve the division. That will knock the Islanders out. Then 2 against Pittsburgh. Those 2 against Pittsburgh will decide it. I'm fairly confident in that. And as a hockey fan, you can't ask for anything more than Washington and Pittsburgh, Caps, Penguins, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby deciding the division with 2 games against each other a year. In the case of the Penguins have another one against the Bruins, who they played on Sunday. They play the Bruins tonight. And then there's 2 against the Caps, as I mentioned. And then it's just 2 against the Flyers and then 2 against the Sabres. So what's interesting here is the Penguins play fewer games than the Caps for the rest of the year. So the Caps, in theory, have more chances to build up points. But the Penguins do not play the Buffalo Sabres. The Capitals do not play the Buffalo Sabres for the rest of the year. The Penguins do. They have 2 games remaining against the last place Buffalo Sabres, who, by the way, have been playing much better as of late than they did in March, where they won 1 game on the last day of March, or else they would have gone 4.5 weeks without winning a single game. But the Sabres are now only 2 points behind New Jersey, that second to last spot in the East Division. Not that it means anything other than them not being historically bad anymore. They are terrible, but earlier in the year, they were like 12, 15 points behind the next worst team. Not like that anymore. But Pittsburgh, 2 games against Buffalo, so huge. But Washington, again, points percentage, and I still pick Washington to win the division in this one. Finally, Scotia North Division. Unfortunately, the Leafs sweeping the Jets in 2 straight last week. It was expected. The Leafs are clearly the better team, but I was really hoping just for excitement value, which would sweep those 2 games and tie the division at 61 points. Didn't happen. I'm very confident the Leafs will probably clinch the division with at least 2 games left. That's my prediction. But we can look into it, for what it's worth. The Jets at 57, sitting at 57 points now, with the Leafs still at 60. The Leafs at 65. The Jets do have a game in hand. Jets will go 2 against the Oilers, 1 against the Habs, 1 against the Senators, 1 against the Flames, another Senators, 2 against the Canucks, and 1 against the Leafs. Ideally, that last game of the season, Jets-Leafs matters. I don't think it will. I think the Leafs will have already clinched by that point. But the Leafs are the best team in the division. They have been all year. They've sat in sole possession of first place for nearly the whole year, and deservedly so. So, in all likelihood, the Leafs take that division. For what it's worth, the Leafs finish the year a couple days off for now. Then they're going at Montreal, back-to-back nights. Canucks again, 3 straight against the Habs, Sens, Jets. So I would expect somewhere in that 3-game Habs series, I would expect the Leafs to clinch the division. But after that, as I've said all year, I'm really hoping for an interconference first-round matchup, which we could get in the Central between a West and an East Coast, between a West and East team. In fact, we definitely will. We will get one in the first round. It'll either be Carolina, Florida, Tampa Bay against Nashville, one of those Carolina, Florida, Tampa Bay against Dallas, potentially even Chicago. So we will have something there. McDavid, Matthews, first-round matchup. Leafs, Oilers, not going to get that, it looks like. But still, the Oilers will probably, looks like they almost really guarantee a playoff spot. They're 11 points up. So it looks like we'll have first round, regardless of who's home. And then Habs Leafs to finish the year, or Habs Leafs after finishing the year, Habs Leafs in the first round playoff series. The Calgary Flames only 4 points back, but I do think this will be it. It'll be Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and those are some great matchups. You cannot complain about that. So that'll wrap up the standings recap as we head into these final 10 or so games of the season. But the biggest deal, the biggest news in the NHL right now is really not even on the news. The negotiating for the new TV deal, as NBC has been the NHL's American leader since the lockout, between when they had Versus, now NBC Sports Network, NBC national games on Sunday afternoon, playoff games, etc. That will change next year. NBC has officially pulled out, and it will be the first time since 2005 that NBC will not carry a single NHL game. That will be next season, as ESPN has taken over as the NHL's primary American broadcast partner, whereas the second one, the NHL is trying to get either TNT or Fox. And those would both be massive for the NHL, as since the lockout with exposure in the U.S. and having ESPN as your primary broadcast partner will absolutely help to change that. And TNT or Fox, both of those major networks that carry. Fox carries the World Series. Fox carries a lot of MLB playoffs. A lot of TNT has NBA on TNT, massively popular. Really, the only league those don't cover is the NFL. Or Fox obviously is on the NFL, nationally and on local Sunday games, but not on TV. But NFL is the number one league in America. Is stuck with, they have NBC, ESPN, Fox, CBS. They have everything, and that makes them the most valuable number one league in America. The NHL can work that up. If they can get a Fox deal or a TNT deal, that would be massive. The closest they've come to that really is a couple TBS playoff deals in the past. As playoff games have been on the Golf Channel, TBS, really just it shouldn't be that shouldn't be the case. And as Bob McKenzie, TSN, Bob McKenzie reporting, he said about an hour ago, quote, "Not official by any means, but I'm hearing the NHL's secondary broadcast partner is more likely to be TNT as opposed to Fox." So that is very, very important. Fox and TNT both running back and forth, though, as there have been reports that Fox is going to make another offer. But ESPN is the primary broadcast partner. That's going to help massively with exposure. Obviously, Canada is hockey is Canada's game, but the U.S. has plenty of hockey fans, and more importantly, plenty of space to grow hockey fans into the community. As if they can get on ESPN, that's just far more exposure. Because as of now, ESPN is the worldwide leader in sports, whether they like it or not. That is who you have to go through if you want to be. If you want your sport to be popular, you need to be on how every other league has grown. And unfortunately, ESPN has had no reason, no financial incentive to report on or cover the NHL much over the past 15 years or so. They have, just because it is still a major sport. But under Barry Melrose, when nobody who's watching really isn't going to cut it. So this is going to be big. Hopefully, they put in a lot of money to their NHL coverage. But that'll start next season as ESPN and probably either Fox or TNT, the NHL's American broadcast partners, and that should help to massively grow the game in the United States. Looking at the NHL stat leaders now as we head into these final 10 games or so, as I said, is sitting at 77 points. I mean, if you remember, it's a shortened season. In an 82-game season a few years ago, Jamie Benn won the Art Ross at 87 points, and Conor McDavid has 77 with 10, which is it is just it's insane to see, but it is really amazing. As Conor McDavid, I mean, he's got 25 goals, 52 assists this year, 77 points, and who's in second? Of course, his line mate, 22 goals, 42 assists for 64 points. And also both of them staying out of the box a lot. But Conor McDavid at 1.71 points per game, averaging right now, absolutely highest in the league. And so he is on pace this season to finish with 96 points. He has an outside shot at 100. Over the Oilers' final 11 games, he would need 23 points. So he'd need about 2 points a game plus one more. It's possible, and it's close. If he's still within strength of in the last 3 or 4 games, everyone will have their eyes glued to that, because that would be truly amazing to hit 100 points in a 56-game season in this era. But McDavid and Draisaitl are the top 2 in scoring. Nathan McKinnon next at 59 points, and those are all playoff teams. Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews. So those top five in scoring. I mean, it's also, you just have a good mix of different teams, but two sets of line mates, McDavid and Draisaitl 1-2, and then 4-5 Matthews and Marner from the Leafs. But it just shows how well these guys work together. And then you got the classics: Kane, Crosby, Marchand, Jake Gensel. Speaking of line mates with Sidney Crosby, they've really good together this year. Scored another spectacular goal a few days ago. Jake is in top 15 in scoring. So what a world. Nicholas Backstrom, who just played his 1,000th game, future Hall of Famer Nicholas Backstrom, 16th in scoring, which is especially amazing because he is one of the oldest players on this list. He's one of the most underrated players. People always forget about him. Only a one-time All-Star, but he is one of the greatest passers and greatest playmakers in NHL history. He's 33 years old, and at 33 years old in this COVID crazy year, he is 16th in the NHL in scoring. So on that end. Also for goalies, the Vezina will be interesting this year, as it is such an unusual year. And what's interesting is this year, I think more affecting more than any other, is that these sets of games, when you're playing the same team, like 2 days in a row, or 4 times in 6 days, or 3 times in 6 days, whatever. Playing the same teams this many times better looks at you, so it is tougher for the goalies. But Philip Grubauer, Andrei Vasilevsky, both I think the two top candidates right now. Freddie Anderson has fell off a cliff a little bit, as he for a while could have been an argument that he was the favorite for a while back earlier in the season, but the Leafs have been have not had a stable goalie situation, let's say, as Jack Campbell has just come in and absolutely taken the job, and he will, in my opinion, my guess, he will be the Leafs starting goalie, which is a far fall for Freddie Anderson. But Jack Campbell, Anderson, they traded for David Riddick from Calgary. They at least have a kind of a goaltending committee right now. But I would choose Jack Campbell to start for them in the playoffs. Looking at defenseman Adam Fox, who, if it wasn't for Kirill Kaprizov, he would win the he would win the Calder. I think those are two guys that would win the Calder Trophy probably 2/3 of the time. But unfortunately, it's the same year for both of them. I don't think Fox will win the Norris. That would probably go to Victor Hedman, which is lots of good rookies this year. Just the Robertson brothers, both of them, Jason and Nick in Dallas and in Toronto, and then Nick hasn't played as much. Very bright stars, 2 guys in Ottawa, Norris and Stützle, and that's always good if the Senators can be good and make it a rough, they can get good over the next year or two. That would be awesome. And then Sharon Govich in New Jersey is just for a team that isn't very good, but we have plenty of great rookies across the board this year. I do think Kirill Kaprizov is essentially a lock to win it. That's probably the only real lock of a trophy there is. I mean, Art Ross, it's going to be McDavid, but the race is just to 100. The Hart, who knows? Jack Adams, I think that one also is very clear. Dean Evason in Minnesota, that usually just goes to a team or to a good team that we all expected to not do too well and then end up doing well. And the definition of that is the 2020-21 sort of Wild, as they were expected by most to be a fringe playoff team at most, and here they are, having clinched a 3rd spot with the division title still in sight against Colorado and Vegas with 10 games to go. So I think that's also very well deserved for Dean Evason, career hockey lifer. I've seen him. He's a little assistant on the Caps. I was very familiar with him. And but other than that, the awards are pretty much up for grabs. We just have a lot of hockey to go these last 10 games to figure a lot out. Went through my playoff teams. I'm going to give my final 4 right now. Prediction, even though I'm sure I'll be wrong. Final 4, final 2, and then the Cup champ. Final 4, I'm going to have Washington, Winnipeg, Florida, and Colorado. And then in my Stanley Cup final is actually going to be a rematch of the 1990 Stanley Cup final. Colorado, Florida. I think Colorado wins it. I think Colorado is getting hot at the right time. Nathan McKinnon, this is his time to shine. So my prediction now, Colorado Avalanche to win the 2021 Stanley Cup. But next week will be our final show before the playoffs, as it'll just be a couple more games after next week. But until then, we are on the NHL Low Down, spanning the sports world, Zingo TV, and we have an exciting show next week as we head right to us next week, same time, same place. I'll see you then. My name is Jeremy Schooler.